Hi Dan, thank you very much for joining Secrets of Talent conversation. Really appreciate your time. Dan, I want to kick off the conversation just kind of hearing more about yourself and kind of your career pathway. I know this conversation is going to be a bit about careers, but your career pathway to becoming a careers advisor at probably one of the most prestigious universities in the world.
Yeah, well, I think I've been very lucky. Like many people of my generation, I was the first in my family to go to university, and I didn't know any adults who'd been to university, and I didn't have any idea about what careers you could get into after going to university. I didn't get much career support, so perhaps that influenced my future career decisions. They often say people teach what they need to learn. So it's all I did is I followed my interests. I studied history because that's what I was interested in. And that turned out to be a good lesson. I really enjoyed history. I've kept up an interest in it all through my life. I completed my degree. I never struggled at all finishing my degree. So that was one careers lesson, following my interests. And then I fell into working in financial services. I just had a back office operations job. And what I learned there was play to your strengths. So I was not good at the technical stuff. I wasn't a sort of great subject matter expert, but I was good with people. I was good with organizing stuff, and I was good at getting things done. So I developed my career as a general manager, an operations manager in financial services. I did that for about 10 years for a big investment bank. And at that point, I realized I was only ever going to be a small cog in a big machine. And I thought, if I don't change now, I probably never will. So third lesson was having the courage to make a change. And I switched to working for a fintech startup. And I did that for 6 years. And after 6 years there, I was a little bit burned out. I finished some big projects. I felt like we'd got to a good place and I could leave with a clear conscience. And so then I switched to doing careers work. So I switched to working as a careers coach for Henley Business School. And there I was supporting students who were doing masters in finance. That was my primary cohort that I supported. So that was the bridge to making that switch from working in a career in finance to supporting students that wanted to work in that sector. And I was at Henley for 3 years. And then I moved 3.5 years ago to Said Business School, which, as you alluded to, is part of the University of Oxford. And here I'm head of global industry careers. So I've got a small team and we look after students. We organise ourselves by sector here. So there's a team looking after students that want to go into consulting, a team that look after students that want to go into finance, a team that look after students who want to go into tech, and then every other job, whether it is in a startup, a scale-up, a global corporation, a charity, an NGO, anything else at all, we call that global industry, and it's my and my team's job to support those students. So there's a lot of variety, but there's a lot of interest in there as well. And I suppose the thread that pulls all of that together is when I was working as a general manager and operations manager, and when I was in the startup, all through that work, what I enjoyed the most was helping people develop and coaching them. And so that was what led me into careers work. And I was building on those skills when I made the transition.
And clearly, the sort of students you probably deal with now, or the sort of people you dealt with in your previous roles, etc., the nature of the students will probably change, or the nature of the people you coach or mentor will probably change. And what it is about those that are probably here within a sort of high caliber students, if you want to call them that, where you have very strong they have high expectations of them, very high expectations of them, that you as a careers advisor or mentor have to work towards? And how do you see that being a bit different to how you would do that with sort of more traditional students from different backgrounds, for example?
Yeah, I think there's some differences and there's a lot there's the same. So you're on the right lines. They're very capable, very ambitious students that I'm working with. I mostly work with full-time MBAs. So these are people typically in their late 20s or early 30s. They have some work experience and they've got big aspirations. Often they want to do work that's going to be really impactful and meaningful. Perhaps they want to leave a big dent in the universe. So working with that is challenging, but a lot of what we have to do with them is the same. So we have to support them with their career decision making, figuring out what they want to do, what's going to be achievable, putting in place strategies to achieve those aspirations. There's a lot of encouraging them and supporting them with networking and discovery and exploration, to find out more about the career areas that interest them and to build the networks that are going to help them access opportunities. And there's still some work to do helping them sharpen up what we think of as the careers toolkit. So CV polish, interview preparation, elevator pitch, cover letters, presentation skills, all those sorts of things need to be at a very high standard for the kind of jobs that they're interested in. So, much of that is the same as advising pre-experienced masters or undergraduates or other cohorts of students. I suppose maybe some of the differences with some of our students that have big aspirations to make real changes in the world, the careers they're aspiring to are not that well defined. They're quite ambiguous. They're not quite sure where they're going to land. Does it mean working for an activist organisation? Does it mean working for a think tank? Does it mean working for a consultancy? Does it mean working for a scale-up? Does it mean founding your own venture? And so there's probably a bit more work to do with those kind of students on the career decision making and helping them with the exploration of those career paths. They're not that well defined. Some career paths are very well defined. If you want to work in finance, it's not easy, but it is pretty simple. You know what you need to do and what the steps are in that career. So helping students deal with that ambiguity. I think it's common across all student cohorts, but perhaps there's a bit more of it in my world than in others.
That's very interesting. You mentioned MBA students there. What do MBA students need to do to remain competitive in the world we're living in today, especially the ever-evolving world that we're living in today? And particularly, what skills would they need to remain competitive?
Well, I wouldn't want to... I would still emphasize the traditional and conventional skills. We can't hide from that. So you need to be good at operations management, good at marketing, good at leadership, all the sorts of things MBA programs have taught for decades now. There is an emphasis on being good with data, being good at compiling data and analyzing data and being comfortable with statistics and manipulating data in Excel or Python or Power BI or SQL. So that's probably something a little bit new. Being able to do a bit of coding is useful. So, our students don't want careers as software engineers. They don't want to be coders, but being able to throw up a website or code something simple in Python or put together a quick routine to create a management information dashboard and make those things really efficient, that sort of thing is useful. On the interpersonal skills, employers are definitely interested in people who can demonstrate that they're good at influencing internally within an organization. They can be very persuasive and make good arguments and put forward good ideas and get them accepted. Good at stakeholder management and managing customers, and good at establishing and maintaining partnerships. We find many businesses now, they increasingly are partnering with other kinds of organizations that might be competitors, might be peers, might be corporate venturing, might be working with the government sector or the NGO sector, but increasingly, being able to establish and maintain productive partnerships is an important skill. So, those are some of the things that are perhaps a little bit newer that we're seeing more and more emphasis on.
That's very interesting. I mean, you've brought quite something quite new, you new to, which is obviously Python and sort of basic tech skills, and I think that's quite interesting because you wouldn't traditionally associate that with a traditional MBA. It's typically business management, etc. So the ability to have some sort of flexibility in having sort of certain tech skills is essential, and I think that links quite nicely to my question on employability. And with employability changing in this landscape we've got now, especially where you've got AI coming into the fold of it, do you think AI poses a positive opportunity for employability, or is it a threat to employability? And more importantly, how do you think it would impact the role employability and careers plays in an individual's life?
So it's probably a little bit early to make definitive judgments on how it's going to change employability. Um, I personally, I'm confident that it is definitely going to change the labour market and the kind of skills that are going to be valuable in the workplace. And some things some of us used to be very proud of, like our ability to synthesize information and write really compelling copy, or put together really persuasive business cases and white papers and things of that nature. Perhaps there will be less emphasis on those skills and more emphasis on other skills. So, the jury's out on exactly how that is going to change. I personally, I've been thinking more about how AI is going to change careers delivery and what career services and careers practitioners need to do. Because I think a lot of sort of information, advice, and guidance students will now access by chat, and a lot of the sharpening up of the toolkit, so the CVs, the cover letters, the interview preparation. I think a lot of students will do that by using generative AI. So we as careers professionals need to think about that quite carefully. It's not really a new problem. We've always had students accessing careers advice and careers guidance, either online. We know they get it from TikTok or YouTube, or they get it from friends and family. And the challenge has always been making sure that what they're accessing is right, because there's a lot of bad advice out there, and I don't think Chat GPT and AI is going to change that. And then what I think might be a new danger would be when you use generative AI to create, say, a cover letter or something like that. It's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking it's done because it looks good enough. So you can produce something with ChatGPT. It's kind of 80% there. It looks okay. It's very easy for a student to be satisfied with that. Whereas if they just put in a little bit more effort, maybe 20% more effort, they would have something much better to use for an application. So I think career services need to think quite a lot about how we're going to encourage the best use of these new tools among our student cohorts. I think there will still be a place for interpersonal interactions between career coaches and students, but they will have to be sort of very high EQ coaching, where we're really doubling down on the value of the relationship to help motivate students and help them deal with the anxiety and stress of job seeking and thinking about their careers. And we're going to have to work quite hard, I think, at selling the benefits of coming and seeing a career coach or a career advisor, because it's going to be so much less convenient than just accessing ChatGPT on your phone or on your laptop. And the other places I think where career services are going to have to lean into will be brokering interactions. So brokering interactions between students and employers. That might be panels, it might be one-to-one conversations, it might be career fairs, it might be placements and internships. So, lots of things we're already familiar with, but we're going to have to lean into that even more, I think. There's definitely going to be changes to the way career services operate, and we need to figure out how to address this new world we're in now.
Very interesting. I was looking at the syllabus for the level 7 careers professional development, what it's called, and the way I see it is from AI perspective. And I'm sort of going quite into it actually in recent months. Is that there's two aspects to a careers advisor's role: admin side, where you've got the administration stuff, the CV writing, the administration to applying for jobs, etc., typing of forms, and then you've got the pastoral side or the mentorship side. Now, there's a certain aspect where some people may rely upon speaking to a computer and kind of having that emotional support from a computer. That's not new in terms of people have been doing what you can call cyber dating, where effectively they're sharing their emotions with somebody they don't really know. But if you strip that away, you've got two aspects. If you remove the administration stuff, you can actually have more quality time with those students and those colleagues of yours that you're giving careers information advice and guidance to. So I think the term careers information advice and guidance will have to change, because it will largely focus on the guidance part from an individual perspective, rather than the information advice, which is, as you readily said, just too readily available to make. Now, you're right in the sense that some of the information needs to be fact checked, some of it doesn't. But I think probably if I was going to ask you a final question, it would be, what advice would you give to not just students but those adults in the marketplace where they want to remain competitive in the job market? There's loads of layoffs happening. Tech firms are laying off people, etc. So, what advice would you give to people in work or going into work in terms of remaining competitive for prospective employers?
One thing I always encourage is networking and investing quite a lot of time in building a productive network in your sector or in sectors that you think might be interesting for you. So this is not the sort of transactional activity of making a connection and asking them to help you get a job. That's not going to work. It's just going to scare people off. This is much more about establishing relationships of mutual benefit with people in your sector, as I say, in sectors that you're interested in. Taking a lot of time and putting in a lot of effort creating that network, being confident that value can be shared across the network, and being willing to give to the network as well as take from it. Because I really believe it's through these networks that you can do the most productive career exploration. You might call it horizon scanning, but it helps you understand what's changing, where opportunities may emerge, what you might need to do to position yourself to access those opportunities. And then, of course, it is through those relationships that sometimes you can access those opportunities through referrals or just being notified about them. So having a big network that you invest in on an ongoing basis, not just when you want a job, you really want to create your network before you need it. And that will give you the biggest possible surface area for learning and exploration and serendipity. And that then feeds on to my next point, which would be to be continuously learning. Probably not a new point, but there's no way you can sort of rest on your laurels now in the job market and think that you're the finished item, because so much changes so quickly. So if what you're learning, what you're finding out through the network is, opportunities are coming up in area X, and to access them, you need skills and experience Y and Z. Well, you have to act on that information and make sure that you've acquired skills and experience Y and Z. And I think if people are managing their career in that way, proactively managing their career in that way on an ongoing basis, then you can best position yourself for any kind of career transformation, whether it's a sort of intentional one that's driven by you, or an unintentional one that's forced on you by a layoff or something of that nature. So, yeah, I always counsel the importance of creating and maintaining networks, and then acting on the information you learn through that activity.
Dan, some very insightful information there. Really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining the Secrets of Talent.
No problem. It's been a pleasure. Lovely to speak with you.